We're so glad that you signed up for this course. Over the next few weeks together, I just want to say, if you've got any questions, prayer requests, or anything like that, don't hesitate to email us at info@theren.org. We'd love to hear from you. We want to journey with you together. We want to make this a personal, prayerful experience. By the way, I just want to read for you a quote that came from one of our team members who, after I sent a sample of the video to him, he said, look, this is great. I'm sure many minds will be unlocked and opened in new ways. That's exactly what we're praying for you, that the Lord would speak into your heart, that you'd be able to articulate your calling statement, and that you would take your calling to serve God's purposes in your generation. That's what we want. We want the kingdom of God to expand and enhance because you're contributing to it with your calling. As we like to say around here, our motto is connecting calling to culture. When you have found your calling and you connect to culture, then the kingdom of God and the glory of God will have been given its due because each one of us is contributing in the way He's made us to be. So enjoy this course, connect with us, and we'll be praying for you. So passions are what we enjoy doing, and gifts are what others enjoy us doing. And there's a strong pairing, not just, you're gifted, now go and accomplish a lot of things. But God is loving and good because He's saying, well, I'm going to let you enjoy it too. We develop a theology of vocational discernment, right, which is discerning our vocation, our calling, in a way that's faithful to this Christian scriptures, guided by the Holy Spirit, informed by what we might call our divine design, how we are made, and transformative of culture and kingdom. Okay, so it's got to have an impact. We'll read this together. This comes from Placker, who wrote a pretty big book on callings. Here's the first quote, right? Here's Placker. He says, "To believe that a wise and good God is in charge of things implies that there is a fit between things that need doing and the person I'm meant to be. Finding such a fit, I find my calling." So talk to me. What is he saying? How is he defining calling? What's calling for him? Before we get to why God is good and wise, what is calling? Okay, good. His plan will be fulfilled because of the purpose that God has given specifically to you, right? Excellent. Okay, good. Anything else? Yeah. Okay, so specifically, why is he wise? Anyone thought on that? That's good. Ellie? Okay, good, excellent. So he's wise because what? There's a somewhat pretty strong pairing between, on the one hand, what? Say it again? Wisdom. Okay, God has wisdom because He's trying to pair up two things. A set of what? On one hand, the things that need to be done in the world, right? Like bridges need to be built, right? And music needs to be made. And then the things that we are gifted at doing. Does that make sense? So he's wise that if there are 85 million things that need to get done in a year, there are 85 million sets of skills, and you get the idea, that can meet those needs, right? But he's also good because, why? He's good to us because, oh, that's awesome. Okay, so in lecture 3, we're going to talk about gifts and passions, but already you're saying, here are the needs of the world, and a wise God has paired up sort of things like our gifts that can meet those needs, right? But He's also good because He lets us enjoy it with our passions. And you guys know already, if you read the book, I hint at it, but our gifts, our passions, serving God's purposes in the world. So passions are what we enjoy doing, and gifts are what others enjoy us doing. And there's a strong pairing, not just, you're gifted, now go and accomplish a lot of things. But God is loving and good because He's saying, well, I'm going to let you enjoy it too, right? Okay, so we're going to unpack this a bit further. Just a biblical basis for calling. Can I get a couple people, maybe someone look up Proverbs 18:16, and then someone else look up Proverbs 22:29. And then we'll read a couple other passages all together on the screen. But if someone gets Proverbs 18 for us, Proverbs 18:16, if you can read it for us, and then we'll move to Proverbs 22. So this is probably a familiar verse for a lot of you. Anyone on Proverbs 18? Okay, thanks, E.G. And then, Bradley, if you go to 22. Great, thanks. Go for E.G. So Proverbs 18:16.
A gift opens the way and ushers the giver into the presence of the great.
Okay, ushers the gifted into the presence of the great. I guess in that version, it brings us in front of the great. A gift makes room for you, right? That's a pretty common, you might have even heard that in non-biblical context. And it brings us into the presence of the great. Proverbs 22, Bradley?
Do you see a man skillful in his word? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men.
Okay, so it seems that when we're gifted, we will, not guaranteed, the book of Proverbs is not a book of promises, but it's a book of principles. So generally speaking, when you're gifted at something, generally speaking, it has a way of bringing you before kings, right? And the kings of our day, by the way, are less so like prime ministers and presidents as they are sort of the cultural gatekeepers of Hollywood and social media, right? When you see someone gifted, they're inevitably going to show up on your feed. Are you with me? And that's the idea behind this. The book of Proverbs, but now, take a look at, stay on 22, and Bradley, if you can help us again. If you look at, would you read verses 1 and 4 also? Because 22, 29 sounds like, okay, let's just get gifted, skilled, and let's be great. But take a look at verses 1 and 4, if you can read that for us, Bradley.
So, verse 1, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. And then verse 4, the reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life.
Great, thanks. So if you look at those verses, there's a lot more to be said about the fear of the Lord and about a great name. In other words, at the end of our time together this whole semester, the takeaway is going to be that calling very much matters, because once you have your calling, you will be able to impact culture. That's huge for like connecting our calling to culture. That's what it's all about. But the invisible link between calling and culture is actually character. It's actually a great name. A great name is better than riches and honor and so forth, right? Fear of the Lord is better than those things. And so character is what we're going to end with. As just a heads up, in Romans 12, Paul says something very similar, different writers, but same thought. We won't read through all of this, but long story short, he says we all have gifts. Some of it is some of you are to prophesy, some of you are to teach, some of you are to give encouragement. Take a look at the last couple ones here, right? Some of you are to actually make a lot of money and give it away. I actually have a friend who, I think I shared this briefly before, but his goal is to just make as much money as he possibly can to fund people in the kingdom, specifically PhDs who are looking to study in theology or philosophy. So if you have an interest of going on for theology or philosophy in a PhD and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this, talk to me, I'll talk to my friend, and he's really about it. He's not just saying this like I just want to make a lot of money for the kingdom, but just actually let me just make a lot of money. He really means it. And so he's helped me somewhat, but even our friends are right now out in Oxford because my buddy has decided that his calling in life is, he's a lawyer, he makes good money, but a lot of it he uses to literally fund Christian PhDs through the universities, right? And so the question is, which one is yours? Like, how do you figure out which calling you're supposed to, pursue and fulfill, right? And that's kind of where we're headed here. So let's start at the top, knowing God's purposes. In Acts 13:36, King David gets pretty much half a sentence. King David is like the number 2 guy in all of Jewish history, right? He gets about half a sentence on his epitaph, right? Which is basically, King David served the purposes of God in his generation and fell asleep. He died, right? This is literally the best thing you can say of King David, because the most you can do with your life is to serve God's purposes. Now, remember, let's try to stay away from Christianese. What does that really mean? Here's what the Blackabees, Father and Son, and the Cloud King also says. That God wants to involve you in his purposes. God has been working in the world all along, and so we see in Matthew 5:17. He has been working in your life since your birth. When God gets ready for you to take a new step or direction in his activity, it will always be in sequence with what he has already been doing in your life. Okay? What does that mean? In short, it means, take a look at this, and I'll give you my little takeaway on this. we won't read this all of it, but look at just take the reference down in 2 Corinthians 1:37. There's literally in the Greek 10 uses of the word comfort in a total of 5 verses. I mean, just by looking at it, right? Like, blessed be the God of all comfort who comforts us in all affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. And it goes on, right? So in other words, God comforts you so that you can comfort others in the same affliction that you've experienced. Here's how I like to put it. When we're thinking about calling, how do we figure out our calling? Our past pains are often a pointer to our present passions and our future pathway, right? Not every time, but a lot of times, the things that have pained you, that's why we started last week or 2 weeks ago by sharing a lot about our own pains, because you can begin to discern what you're going to be passionate about and what your pathway is to help others by reflecting on how can God redeem that pain in my past? And oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes our past pains points us to what am I passionate about? I mean, let's just give a couple. Some of you guys can probably offer examples in your own life. And then I'll just point to my own experience in college. I think I shared this briefly last time, but for about 10 months, for a better part of a year, I think I told you guys, I never experimented with drugs, but I experimented with atheism, and it was a bad trip. But basically, during that time, in the middle of it all, I actually said to myself, I guess, because I didn't know God was there yet, I said, I don't know, God, if you're there, and if you help me get out of this, I will spend my life trying to help people not to fall into just the craziness that I fell into, right? I mean, that 10 months was, I would stay up to 3, 4 in the morning, just badgering my roommates, trying to figure out whether there's a God or not. I mean, all kinds of things. And then for another 10 years, I went from not knowing my calling to finally, and I'll just write it on the board, I guess, and I'll share with you guys, but to kind of trying to come up with my own calling statement. I think I told you guys, when I was 30, I asked a mentor of mine, I said, hey, what would you tell a 30-year-old with interests as wide as this world, passions that run deep? And he said a couple things, and then he said, well, I'll tell that 30-year-old to email me. And so he kindly invited me into a friendship. And over 10 years, literally, to come up with this 9-word calling statement. And in about 3 weeks, we're going to have you guys try to write up a calling statement too. But my calling statement is something along the lines of to bridge the church and the academy, so the university, right? With theology. I don't know, is that 9? I think I counted right the last time I checked. To bridge the church and the academy with theology. That took me 10 years to come up with. Now, this class doesn't last 10 years long, and so thankfully we can hopefully do it. The whole point of our nonprofit that we started is to be able to help people with the Lord's timing, of course, but shorten that down a bit so you can begin to figure out what you're made to be and do, right? So that's the whole idea behind it. Does it all make sense? Okay, any questions? Because I want to show you a couple of videos now. You shared a little bit about your family upbringing and whatnot, but are there other experiences or anything that has that you can see as a thread between like your upbringing, your past, good and bad experiences and all, to where you are today? And how, is there a storyline that you feel like that kind of connects between experiences in the past and your present work?
Well, one of the things that I think partly shaped my life is that when I came to the United States, I was the only brother here. So living with my dad, I didn't know, it's hard to explain, but I felt sort of abandoned here in America because all my family was back in Brazil, except for even though he's my dad, I didn't meet him until I was 8 years old. That was the first time meeting this man, and now he's he's your father too, by the way, and you have to live with him on your own. And so the thing that taught me was two things that until much later in life you start figuring out is one, that you felt abandoned, but that abandonment also made me stronger. Like I wasn't afraid to be. So you have the fear of being left behind, but at the same time you don't have the fear of being left. I don't know how to explain it, but you sort of fight within yourself, like, I can do this because, I've done it before. When you're an 8-year-old child and you think, I can do this, when you're 55 years old, listen, I got this. It's the same feeling, by the way, but it's now you feel more confident in yourself. And so for the first part of my life, I didn't have that confidence. And then the second part of my life, it's like you start feeling that, well, I've been through this before. And so more than ever now, I know that, things that happen in your childhood definitely affects who you are as an adult. And it's the little things that can make things change in your lives.
Introduce you to this gentleman by the name of Michael. Some of you guys have seen this video. We'll link it up on Canvas or on different places where you can take a look. But it's a 3.5 minute video, about 3 minutes video, well worth it. I tried to edit it down. But try to get a real sense of what he's talking about here, okay? Between a difference between your why and your what. Some of you may have seen this already, but try to think of it now in terms of the context of calling. Okay, so have a look here.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now, right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
Let's go. Now. Okay. Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose. Just call it how do I.
Right. Okay. Really powerful, right? What's the idea? I mean, it's really just this simple distinction between our what and our why. Here's the thing: a lot of people, when you ask them, "Hey, what do you do? What are you?" It's an easy answer, right? I'm an electrical engineer. I'm a whatever, right? That's the what. The question we really want to get at is, what's the why that's underneath all the whats? It's kind of a strange way to put it. I'm in a conversation with a friend of mine, and he's much older. He's probably just about in his 40s, and that's the one question we're working on. What is his why? Because he's like, should I switch careers now? Should I? He's trying to figure all this out. To me, that's not even the question to be thinking about. The question is, never mind what you should do in 5 years, but why would you do anything that you do? You guys know that, what is it, like something like 75% of all the jobs that people are going to be working on in 2025 haven't even been created yet? You guys seen that video, right? So, okay, that's true. So we don't even know what we're going to be in 7 years or 6 years from now. But if you know your why, you can begin to discern what things you should do according to your why. A ton of whats will come at you. Let me try to illustrate another way.
I'm a professional opera singer, and radio is my day job. I have a master's degree in music, so you might be thinking that I am not using my music degree in my job as a broadcast journalist, but you would be really, really wrong. Yes, radio show host and professional opera singer are two very different jobs. But in fact, the core mission of both of them is exactly the same. In both of those jobs, I'm reaching out to people, I'm communicating with people, I'm inspiring people, I'm moving people using only the power of my voice. So now, if I'm asked how I got where I am, I say, I found my mission, and I forgot about the job title.
The title of this TED Talk, if you want to find the rest of it, is Don't Find a Job, Find a Mission. And that's the distinction. Go for your why, not for your what. Go for your mission, not for an occupation. Because occupations will change over time, but your mission or your calling will stay the same. The reason I write out my calling statement up here is just to give you a sense of that. Again, for me, the way I like to think of it is, this is my calling to bridge the church in the academy with theology. That's my calling. The context in which I do those callings will vary, right? Meaning this, like, I believe I do this somewhat here in this class. Occasionally, I'll go to a retreat, or I'll speak at a church, or I'll do a workshop. Those are contexts, but everything I'm doing is always because of my calling. Does that make sense? It's the why that bridges up all the other whats. So try to figure out, why have you been made at this time, in this location, with the gifts and passions that you have? Figure out your why, and then all the whats can vary with time. With technology, with lots of things. We'll change that up. The context will continue to vary over the course of the next 50 years of our lives, but the calling will always remain the same. So go for your calling, not your context. Go for your why, not your what. Look for your mission, not your job. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the idea behind all this. Again, the difference between calling and context. Okay, when I finishing up college, this phrase, paralysis by analysis. Oftentimes we're like, I got so many things I can do with my life. I'm so paralyzed to make that decision. I don't know which way to go with it. I remember literally talking to my friends, like, back when I was just finishing up college, and that was when I was finishing up. I was like, I think I really have analysis paralysis. I can't figure out what I should do. Until someone said, hey, just do something, and then you can figure out from there, whether it's not for you. And I was like, but what if I waste 6 months in grad school? I don't want to go to grad school, spend $18,000 or whatever for tuition, and then have to reverse all that time back. And you get the idea. I don't want to do that, right? But then I thought, wait a second, maybe there's an analogy here with the playground. I call it the 8:28 principle, and it's very simple, right? It comes from Romans 8:28. But the idea is this. Like, let's suppose like the playground and all the different things on the playground are like different callings, right? So you go on the swings and you try it out and you're like, this seems like it could fit. The question I like to ask is, what good father do we know who, like, you're playing on the swings and then you fall off pretty badly. The father comes around and go, oh, little Susie, so those swings, that wasn't for you. That's not your fit. That's not your calling. Oh, I'm so sorry you've fallen here, and that's just terrible. Oh, well, and then walks away, right? No good father would do that. Are you with me? A good father would do what? Oh, that's not for you. Why don't you come over here to the monkey bars and let's try that out, right? Or that wasn't it either. Let's go over here. So God, as Father and Redeemer, He will always reroute and redirect. I'll actually give you a couple illustrations of this. I mean, real life illustrations, right? So there's someone who works on our staff here. She came here a couple years ago, and previously she was obviously at a different job. And her husband and she both were at that job. They weren't married at the time. They both hated that job. It didn't fit them or their calling whatsoever. But they somehow landed in that space for a while. Now, the gentleman went out and did other stuff, I believe in tech, and now she's here as a staff member. The interesting thing is, because when you're on the monkey bars and you're like, I'm just trying this out, oftentimes the person that you'll encounter while playing on monkey bars, God will maybe like connect you with them, and then their uncle is hiring in the job that's perfectly fitting your calling. You know what I'm saying? Like, God will redeem that. In the case of, I won't name her, but in the case of the staff member, she actually, well, how do you think God redeemed their situation? Well, it's in the story. Yeah, they met each other, and now they're married. So it could be that you're not willing to like go down this route for 6 months because it could be a waste, but the Lord might actually have you meet your spouse there, right? And then you can thank me and then name your first child after me. I wouldn't mind, is what I'm saying. But like that's how the Lord redeems, right? So think of that. In other words, free yourself up from this paralysis by analysis, because the Lord is Redeemer, right? Let me give you a second principle in terms of moving at the right pace. And that's this, I call it the 525 principle, and it's no surprise. It comes from Galatians 5:25. But here's the thought. I was actually driving over to, this is a couple years ago now. I was driving over to Starbucks, and maybe we can get sponsored. No, I'm just kidding. I was driving over to Starbucks, and what happened? I was going in, and I believe it was this book that I was going to work on, believe it or not. And I was like, what I need to do is I need to get at least 4 hours of work done before the afternoon. And as I was like starting my car and heading over, I genuinely thought about this question. Why would I go to Starbucks if I'm a good Christian, even writing a Christian book, right? Why would I go to Starbucks and like put on my big headphones and tune everybody else out for 4 hours when I, as a Christian, know that probably some of the customers and maybe even the staff at Starbucks, they might not know the Lord. So shouldn't I, rather than working on my laptop for 4 hours with my big shouldn't I try to evangelize some of these people, right? I mean, how do I go to Starbucks without feeling guilty, you know what I'm saying? And on the other hand, like, I got to write a book, I think, right? And so what I concluded was this, and this is in my short 5-minute drive over to Starbucks. I figured out that this verse might help, and that is, I honestly believe us like going to Starbucks, and in the case of a midterm, let's say, going and then like, oh, I got to study 2 hours for midterm, but then what a Christian would do is spend 2 hours witnessing instead. Yes, if God is putting on your hearts that you should witness that person, or those 3 people for that matter, and you disobey, then you are going against what God is looking for you to do. Yes, that's true. That's disobedience, right? God is asking you to, you can feel it in your heart, you get the idea, right? But can I submit to you that I believe it's just as much disobedience if you go to Starbucks and God is not putting on your heart to speak to someone, and God is not working on their lives in that way just yet at that moment, and you start talking to them and you can tell right away they don't want to have a single conversation about faith or anything in that season of their life. For you to go ahead and try to push the gospel down their throat and say, well, I got to fulfill my Christian duty, I believe that's just as much as disobedience as it is to not witness when the Lord is asking you to, right? And that's why this principle of Galatians 5:25, how do we move at the pace of God? How do we discern what He's calling us to do, where He's calling us to do it? It's spiritually discerned, right? And that's why, by the way, in the beginning of the book, I talk about we need to be both evangelicals and Pentecostals, like lowercase e, lowercase p. We need like brilliant, like clear thinking, but we also need discernment by the Spirit. So we're not going to get into all that, but that's the idea. Okay, you guys doing okay?
You know, I think in college, I wasn't sure. I wanted to go to graduate school. Wasn't really sure about that. And, you know, there's a lot of pressure, even today, on, you know, what are you going to do? Where are you going to be? You know, slow down. There's a lot of runway, you know, decaf. Yeah, and so my first job out of college was making videos for a corporate environment. And I found that to be fun. And now I find that I was drawing on experience that I had as a high school kid in church or at school, doing drama, doing some things. It was like something you were doing, but it wasn't a goal. But now I'm finding I was drawing on some of those things that I had played with in school. And that was useful, and it was helpful, and I made about 50 or so short movies for employees over about a 3-year period. And I think I also learned from the responsibilities I had, particularly in the church, but in school as well, of what it meant to be a leader and what it meant, and particularly in leading a volunteer organization. Because, you know, when you lead a volunteer organization, you're stuck with all those people. I can't fire them. You know, now when I'm you know, producing a movie and you repeatedly don't match up, you're gone. I can't do that in the church. You got to figure out why Mabel is on this committee and what Mabel can do. And so that sense of leadership, I think, has always traveled with me, that you want to treat people as if, not that they're volunteers, but as if they're part of the team, and you got to figure out how to utilize them. So anyway, I think a lot of those things came together for me. And then I wasn't sure at all about working in movies because even when I was an executive at Paramount for a while, and then went out on my own as you know, really a contract player. People really want to see another Star Trek movie? Really? Well, I don't know. You know, am I going to make my house payments get based on that? Am I going to make a commitment based on? So I wasn't really sure until it became a pattern, and I was able to sort of be successful at it. So it took a while for that sense of it to be there. And then even then, and sometimes now, I think, oh God, why am I here?
Yeah.
What's the real purpose? Let's refine that. Why am I in this position, and what's the best thing, the best and highest use of what I'm skilled at that can be useful? And I don't think you ever stop asking that question. I think that's healthy.
That's really good.
The reverse of that question is my wife saying, "What do you do again?
It's hard
What
to
are you
define.
doing? Where are you going again?"
Yeah.
So it's a good balance.